Alright guys, MTech Guy here, and today we're going to take a look at doing the rear upper control arms on the E53 X5. So the rear upper control arms reside just at the back here, above the axle towards the back. Now what can happen over time is the rubbers can get really hard, cracked and worn out, and it'll affect your wheel alignment, really common problem on these cars. It can also create a bit of slop and instability in the rear end. And another telltale sign that they might be getting worn out is that your inner edges of your rear tyres become much more worn than the rest of the tyre. So really you want to be changing these out before you get to that stage. You don't want to be wrecking a good set of tyres, so it's a good preventative maintenance item. If you haven't already done this job on your X5, it's worth getting stuck in and getting it done. Okay, so let's take a look at what parts we need to get the job done. So it's literally just the two arms themselves. There is a left and a right. Now I normally go for the BMW branded ones or the Lemforder ones. They're normally the best of the bunch. You can see I've gone for the Febby ones this time because I've got to get my car back on the road. It's failed annual inspection, warrant of fitness here in New Zealand, so it's just pretty much what I could lay my hands on in a hurry. They're not a bad brand, they are cheap, but I do find the BMW ones and the Lemforder ones seem to be the best of the bunch. Okay, so let's get into it. So what we'll do first is just slacken off all the wheel nuts, both sides at the rear, while the weight of the car is still on the ground. And then we'll jack her up, we'll put her on axle stands, so we've got the whole of the rear end of the car up in the air, and then we'll get the wheels off and take a look. Okay, so we've got the rear of the car jacked up, got it sitting on axle stands, nice and safe there. Now then, once you get to this stage, before we go any further, if your X5 is equipped with the rear air suspension, you're going to want to deflate the airbags. That's going to make it much easier to change them arms out, because they've got a lot of pressure in there and it's quite difficult to get the old arms out and the new ones in while they're under pressure, while they're still inflated. So you're going to want to look at deflating them, and the easiest way to do that is let the air out the lines that run from the air compressor. You've got the blue and the red lines there. The red feed in the left side of the car, the blue feed in the right, and they go to these air receivers here and here, which feed the airbags. Now probably the easiest way to deflate them is just to undo the two lines there, the blue and the red. So if you just slacken the nuts off maybe 2/3 of the way, don't remove them completely, and you'll hear the air just slowly hiss away, and then just leave them loose. And then once the air's all discharged, you know that them airbags are deflated, and that's going to make it much easier to change them arms out. Now if you're a little concerned about the air compressor kicking in while you've got them nuts backed off on the airlines, what you can do is disconnect the battery. So let's take a look at this. So this is the arm that we're replacing, this one and the one on the other side. So to start off with, we're going to have to remove these lines here, these hard lines. So they just unclip from there. There's a wee door to open there, they lift out, and then there's another clip or two just sitting up there. So we'll get all that released and get them lines away from the arm to start off with. Okay, so we've got these lines unclipped now, and we've got them lifted up and out the way. So the next step is we want to get this shock out the way, just the bottom end. You can leave the top end attached. So we're going to take this bolt out here and then just lift it out the way, and then that'll give us enough room once we undo this ball joint to slide the arm that way, because at the moment there's not enough room there. So this takes a 21mm socket, same on the other end. Okay, so now you can see we've got the lower section of the shock removed from the lower control arm there, just one long bolt to pull out. And what I found I had to do was just jack the lower control arm up slightly just to take the weight to align the bolt to slide out nicely. So now that's out the way, we can move on to the next step, which is to undo the ball joint here. So that takes a 21mm ring spanner, and we're going to counter hold the stud there with a 10mm socket. So we'll remove that now, and then what we'll do is push this out when we're ready. Okay, so now we've got the ball joint released. It doesn't sit in there too tight, but it is sort of caught at the moment, so we might have to just take the weight of the lower control arm again to get that out. But while it's sitting there, I'm going to now move on to the next step and remove the bolt that's holding the other end of the rear upper control arm. Now that's got a nut on this side, and then obviously the head of the bolt's on the other side, and they both take an 18mm. And of course there's not much room around the back here, so you might have to get creative with sliding your hand around there or using an extension socket. Do what you can. Okay, we'll remove that bolt and then we'll see about getting the arm out. Okay, so we've got the inner end of the control arm slackened off now. I've got the nut back right off ready to remove, the bolt's ready to slide out. But to be able to push this all the way out, going to have to remove the brake caliper because you see it's just hitting at the back there. So to do that, to move the caliper, it'll be a 7mm Allen bolt to remove the guide pins, 7mm Allen key, and then 18mm bolts holding the caliper bracket on. So we'll get that up and out the way, and then we should be able to get that out without too much trouble. Alright, you can see that we've got the old arm removed now. So the next job is to transfer all this bracketry and hardware over to the new arm. So there's just a small nut to remove there, which will undo that clamp. And then we can lift that off and you can see it presses into a wee sort of hex hole there. So we'll take a look at that now, we'll get that transferred over. Okay, so we've got this plastic bracket transferred over to the new arm, ready for the new brake lines to go in there. So now we'll refit this back on the car. Alright guys, so there we have it. I've now got them rear arms replaced. I ended up not filming the reinstallation, but it's pretty straightforward. Obviously you're going to refit them new arms, you're going to click the brake lines back in place, reinstall the caliper, put the wheels back on, drop it back down on its wheels, torque up the wheel bolts, and then of course the car's going to be sitting pretty low at the back end, so you just need to retighten them two lines from the air compressor, turn on your ignition, and that should reinflate the airbags and it should be sitting at the correct level. And then there's two things you need to think about before you go any further. So first off, when you fit them new arms, you don't want to go mad tightening the bolts up because you want to torque them with the weight of the car on the ground. So that's the first thing you're going to do once you've got the airbags reinflated, is nip up them bolts and the ball joint. And then the second thing you want to think about is getting a wheel alignment done afterwards. And of course, if you've been having trouble with your rear tyres wearing on the inner edge, it's worth doing this job before you get a new set of tyres, because obviously you don't want to go wrecking a new set of tyres. They're not cheap on these cars due to the size of them. So it's worth getting the arms changed out, get a wheel alignment done, new set of tyres, and then you're all good to go. Alright guys, if you found the video interesting or useful, don't forget to give it a like and make sure you subscribe to the rest of my channel for more BMW DIY videos. I'm MTech Guy. Thanks a lot for watching.